Let's talk about the fights that you have with your partner where it sounds like you're fighting about the dishes, but at some point, you're not fighting about the dishes. You're fighting to be right. You're fighting to win. And when being right and winning the argument becomes more important than feeling connected, then you both lose. Now, I've seen this in coaching and I've lived it in my own marriage. And if we're honest, we've all done it. So today we are talking about why we feel this urge to be right and how two people can both be right at the exact same time. And we're going to talk about 5 steps to stop the fighting and start feeling connected. So let's get into it. Hello, and welcome back to Relating with Jen Funk. I'm Jen, relationship coach and your host. And if you're not familiar with the channel, this is the place where we learn better relationship skills so you can have better relationships. And today, we're going to be talking all about why we always have to fight to be right. But before we get into it, I've got a favor to ask. If you don't subscribe to the channel, please click that subscribe button, hit that like button. I would really appreciate your support. All right, so here's the thing. Most arguments are not about the facts. They're about feelings. And when emotions start intensifying and we get all worked up, our brains just switch into defense mode. We want to prove that we didn't do anything wrong, that we're not the bad guy in the relationship. It's often, hey, you misunderstood me, or I should be the one who feels hurt here. And so we start building our case like attorneys in a courtroom when really our partner just wants to be heard. Now, I worked with a couple recently where the husband felt constantly criticized by his wife, and meanwhile, she felt like he never listens to her. So every disagreement that they have always turns into a debate about what actually happened. For instance, one night she asked, "Hey, can you put down your phone? I'd like to talk." And he sighed, put his phone down and said, "I'm listening." How she perceived that response was that she was annoying him. So she's like, "Ugh, never mind." And so she got quiet and withdrawn. And he said, "What? I didn't do anything." She's like, "You always dismiss me." And he says, "No, I didn't. You asked me to put my phone down, and so I did." And she says, "No, you didn't. You sighed first, and then you reluctantly put your phone down, and clearly you don't really want to talk." He says, "No, I didn't. That's not what I meant." And she says, "Yes, it is, because that's absolutely how it felt." And around they went. Now, he was fighting to be understood and get some validation for, even though he might not have wanted to talk, he did put the phone down. But she was fighting to feel respected because this felt like more evidence that he doesn't want to listen to her. So the moral of the story here is that neither of them won this argument because neither of them felt connected to each other. Does that sound familiar? I'll be honest, this absolutely could have been Casey and me, and I bet we've had this conversation or one very similar, and I bet that you have too. So let's talk about why we do this. Well, when we feel misunderstood, we usually get louder. We might talk more passionately or use more words. And I'll admit this is me and it never gets me anywhere with Casey. And then when we feel disrespected, we get defensive. Like, how could you say that to me? Or how could you do that to me? And then when we feel blamed for something, our instinct is to prove that we didn't do anything wrong. But really, what we're fighting to prove is that we're not a bad partner, we do care about the relationship, and that we matter too. And when we wonder if we matter, then being right can actually feel like proof that we do. But connection is actually what gives us that reassurance. So another point that I want to make is that two people can be right at the exact same time because their experience can be very different. Now, I know you know this because haven't you been in an argument with your person and thought to yourself, "Oh my goodness, what planet do they live on?" That is not what actually happened. But each person experiences a situation through their own unique lens and perspective, and both experiences are valid and real and true to that person. So, for example, you may say something very casually, but your partner might perceive it to be very dismissive. Intent and impact are not the same thing. So, you may mean one thing, but it may land in a totally different way based on your partner's lens or interpretation. So, connection doesn't come from proving that your version is correct. Connection comes from understanding what your partner's experience was. But I know in the middle of a heated moment, this is obviously easier said than done. So the next time that you find yourself getting worked up and getting defensive, I want you to try what I call the 5-step reset method. It's simple and doable, and it helps you reset the conversation before you end up in an argument that has two losers. Now, step 1, the R, that's for remember what you're fighting for. Are you trying to win? Are you trying to prove that you're right? Or are you trying to feel connected to the person that you love so you guys can move past whatever this issue is together? Because guess what? You can rarely have both at the same time. Winning the argument almost always costs you connection. Now, step 2 is the E, and that's for exhale. Take a breath. Just pause for a minute without saying anything. Nothing productive happens when adrenaline is running the conversation. Step 3 is the S, and that is seek to understand. Get curious about your partner's experience and feelings instead of defending yourself. So you might ask, hey, help me understand what that felt like for you. Or what did you hear when I said that? And then acknowledge what you hear. Okay, I can see why that hurt. Or, okay, I understand why that bothered you. Or that makes sense from your perspective. You're not agreeing with the facts. You're not even admitting fault. You're just recognizing their experience. And when people feel heard, they stop fighting to prove their point. Now, the 4th step is another E for express responsibility. So you're going to continue by owning your part, even if it's small. Like, okay, I could have said that better, or I see how my tone came across. I can try to work on that. Or I'm sorry, that wasn't my intention, but I can see how that hurt you. This is not losing. This is repairing. And repair is what makes your relationship stronger. The final step, the 5th step, is the T, and that is team up and move forward. This means shift back into being partners. You're not opponents. You can say, hey, we're on the same side here. I care more about us than this argument. Let's reset. And then end it in a hug. I think every argument should end in a hug. I know if Casey and I have an argument and I don't end it with a hug, it means I'm not done with it yet. It's not fixed for me yet. We're going to have to circle back and try it again. So always try to end with some physical connection, a hug. It reassures your partner that everything is okay. So that's your plan for restoring connection. That's the reset method. So what does this look like in real life? Let's go back to my client's argument about the phone and play it out again. Same couple, same night, same phone, same sigh, but a very different outcome because we're going to do the reset method. And I'm going to show you how powerful this method is because it works even if one person does it. So if you remember, she asked, hey, can you put the phone down so we can have a conversation? And then he sighed and put it down and said, I'm listening. She took offense to this, said, never mind, and then closes herself off. And he says, what? I didn't do anything. And she says, you always dismiss me. Now, here is where he has to make a choice. Instead of defending himself when she says, you always dismiss me, he hits reset. He remembers what he's fighting for. So he asks himself, do I want to prove that I didn't do anything wrong? Or do I want her to not be upset with me and feel close again? Now he chooses, he wants to feel close. And so he continues through the steps to the next one, which is exhale. He takes a big breath. He pauses instead of reacting quickly, and that keeps the conversation from escalating. Moving to the 3rd step, he seeks to understand and then listens. So instead of arguing the facts, he asks her, hey, what about my response just then made you feel like I don't want to listen? And this time she says, well, you sighed and you sounded annoyed. And then his response is the next step, that E for express responsibility. So he says, yes, I did sigh because I was right in the middle of something, but I can see how that came across as dismissive to you, and I'm sorry. So he isn't admitting fault. He's just acknowledging that something that he did came across in a way that he didn't intend. So he owned the impact of his actions. Remember, intent doesn't equal impact. And when he says that, she immediately softens up because he's seeing her. He's validating her experience. And then the final step is the T for team up and move forward. He adds, and I do care about what you're saying. I do want to listen. Would it be okay if I just take a minute here to shift gears and transition out of what I was doing so I can fully listen to you? And of course, she says yes, because now he's shown her that he really does care and he wants to listen. So same situation as before, but instead of spiraling into this circular argument that never resolves, they actually reconnect and feel closer. And that's with just one person hitting reset. And listen, I know I'm making it sound easy. It's not. There's been plenty of arguments that Casey and I have gotten into where we are both digging in. We have that inherent need to prove that we are right and we didn't do anything wrong. But someone has to stop that cycle and make a decision to protect the relationship instead of protecting their position. So if I've learned anything in my 24 years of marriage, it's definitely that being right has never made us feel closer. But slowing down and remembering what we're fighting for and seeking to understand and then listening and expressing responsibility for our part and then getting back into team mode again, that is what has made us closer. So if this episode has made you think about your relationship or maybe a recent argument that you had with your partner, send this to them, listen to it together, talk about it, practice this reset method for yourselves. And if you want more support building connection in your relationship, you can watch several more of my videos or head to jenfunkcoaching.com. You can sign up for my free weekly newsletter there and a bunch of other resources like my free guide, The 5 Simple Habits to Improve Your Relationship Today. And I also created a brand new couples gratitude journal that you can order to help remind you of the good in your relationship and in your partner. So that's all for today. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week. Take care. If you enjoyed watching, be sure you subscribe by clicking my photo or the subscribe button below, or hit like and leave a comment for me. Let me know what spoke to you. You can also head to my website for free relationship resources. And if you're not done watching, check out a few of my other videos.